last week.
Yeah, we had some technical difficulties, so the footage was unusable. So
for some reason.
Anyway, so Job chapter 9. Again, but really for the first time.
Unless it's the second time.
Okay.
The world may never know.
And now I want a lollipop.
That's more shameless advertising there. Okay, so I'll go ahead and read it. And again. And it reads, Then Job answered and said, Truly I know it is so, but how can a man be righteous before God? If one wished to contend with him, he could not answer him one time out of 1,000. God is wise in heart and mighty in strength. Who has hardened himself against him and prospered? He removes the mountains, and they do not know. When he overturns them in his anger, he shakes the earth out of its place, and its pillars tremble. He commands the sun, and it does not rise. He seals off the stars. He alone spreads out the heavens and treads on the waves of the sea. He made the Bear, Orion, and the Pleiades, and the chambers of the south. He does great things past finding out. Yes, wonders without number. If he goes by me, I do not see him. If he moves past, I do not perceive him. If he takes away, who can hinder him? Who can say to him, What are you doing? God will not withdraw his anger. The allies of the proud lie prostrate before or beneath him. How then can I answer him and choose my words to reason with him? For though I were righteous, I could not answer him. I would beg mercy of my judge. If I called and he answered me, I would not believe that he was listening to my voice. For he crushes me with a tempest and multiplies my wounds without cause. He will not allow me to catch my breath, but fills me with bitterness. It is a matter of strength. Indeed, he is strong. And if of justice, who will appoint my day in court? Though I were righteous, my own mouth would condemn me. Though I were blameless, it would prove me perverse. I am blameless, yet I do not know myself. I despise my life. It is all one thing. Therefore I say, he destroys the blameless and the wicked. If the scourge slays suddenly, he laughs at the plight of the innocent. The earth is given into the hand of the wicked. He covers the faces of his judges. If it covers, or not he, who else could it be? Now my days are swifter than a runner. They flee away, they see no good. They pass by like swift ships, like an eagle swooping on its prey. If I say I will forget my complaint, I will put off my sad face and wear a smile. I am afraid of all my sufferings. I know that you will not hold me innocent. If I am condemned, why then do I labor in vain? If I wash myself with snow water and cleanse my hands with soap, yet you will plunge me into the pit, and my own clothes will abhor me. For he is not a man as I am, that I may answer him, that we should go to court together. Nor is there any mediator between us who may lay his hand on us both. Let him take his rod away from me, and do not let dread of him terrify me. Then I would speak and not fear him, but it is not so with me.
So, this is a little different than Job's last reply, because his last reply to...
I always start with who he is responding to.
Okay, yeah.
So he's responding to the short guy. Bildad, the shoe height. Because he's really short.
Yeah.
It's a Sunday school joke.
Okay, so he's responding to Bildad. And again, Bildad was way more harsh in his address to Job than Eliphaz was. I think Eliphaz was trying to be a little more gentle, kind of like...
I think it's each one of the friends of succession just goes further in making the same argument.
Yeah.
So Bildad's big argument was, okay, history shows that I'm right, because bad guys get bad things, good guys get good things.
Yeah.
That's where the idea of karma comes from. Obviously, there is an aspect of it that is accurate and applicable, but it's not reality that it always applies to everything.
Yeah. Well, and that's what Job starts off in this chapter talking about. He says, I know this is so, but what can, like, I'm just man. I can't contend with God. He's so far above me, so, I don't know, so much stronger, wiser.
Well, I've heard people try and argue that Job was perfect prior to this entire encounter, but Job himself is saying outright that he sinned. Well,
yeah.
To be honest, who hasn't? And obviously the only answer there is Jesus. But for most people, the answer is going to be obviously, yes, we've sinned. And Job is acknowledging that he's saying that. how can a man be righteous before God? And so obviously this entire chapter is in the Old Testament. He had no idea Jesus was coming, but he is looking forward to Jesus coming this entire chapter. And that's really what we have to look forward to reading it now, is we have all the answers here later in the book, answering the questions here in the first part.
I love that. It just...
The fly?
No, the fact that Job he's expressing what we as humans all kind of come to a point of, what can I do to please God? Is there anything I can actually do to...
That'd be the human condition.
Be righteous. Yeah. It's so poignant. And then kind of the things that we see in here, I don't know that this would be considered prophetic, but he treads on the waves of the sea kind of seems a little prophetic to me. Not that Job would have known that that's what that was, but
obviously you could try and make an attempt to say that it is, but
at the very least
it's showing God's power and his strength.
Yes.
And that he doesn't play by the rules of nature
That,
like we have to.
that we're constrained by, which is why we are no match for him. But the part a little later, I'm sure we'll talk about it a little more, about a mediator between God and man.
Yeah, later. We'll get that.
Yeah.
Part.
I don't know.
We're not there yet.
Again, I just like it.
We're at verse 3.
Exciting.
Not 33.
Okay, verse 3. If one wished to contend with him, he could not answer him one time out of 1,000. So, have you ever watched like Jeopardy and answered the questions and been like, wow, these people are like, I could totally win Jeopardy. What's the guy's name who did
Jennings.
Ken Jennings? I could totally beat Ken Jennings.
Everyone can at home.
I definitely couldn't. But yeah, it's a different thing, I think, if you're standing on stage.
It's a rerun.
Yeah, it's a rerun. That's funny.
Yeah, so this is Job going out and outright saying that this is how minuscule and finite we are in comparison. Is that if we ask God 1,000 questions that are asked, God can answer all of them. We might answer one, showing how much more God knows than us.
Yeah.
And so he goes on to say that God is wise in heart and mighty in strength. And that's really the acknowledgement of saying this is how great God is in comparison to us. And then who has hardened himself against him and prospered. So obviously this is prior to the whole Pharaoh incident with the Exodus, because it's still early on in Genesis, right after the flood. But already at that point they have probably millions of examples of people that screwed up really badly enough that God wiped the entire earth of them.
Yeah.
And they know this going forward, and so it's, how can you stand against God if you're doing something wrong? We cannot compete with that. And it says he removes mountains they do not know. When he overturns them in his anger, he shakes the earth out of its place and his pillars tremble. This is lots and lots of vivid imagery showing just how big, strong, amazing God is compared to us.
Yeah.
And obviously a lot of people look at Greek mythology from this going, oh, it's up on pillars, and where is Atlas trying to lift it, and blah, blah, blah. That all comes from this. Obviously it's present throughout the conversation, but it very much is showing that God is bigger and better than anyone else in mythology. And it says he commands the sun and does not rise. He seals off the stars. He alone spreads out the heavens and then treads on the waves of the sea. So all these things show his majesty and his power. And elsewhere in the Bible it talks about him commanding the sun multiple times. And so part of it's hard to keep track of where we are compared to where we recorded last week, and it disappeared. Once again, Henry's fault. But I believe it's when he's talking to King Hezekiah, and the prophet that's talking to him says, okay, God has agreed to lengthen your years by 15 years instead of dying right now. And he says, well, how would you like to have proof of that? Because he says, well, I need proof of it. And Hezekiah is given the choice of, okay, jump the sun forward 6 hours or move it back, I think it's 15 degrees, which comes out to like 3 hours, something like that. And he says, okay. let's move the sun back in time. And so God literally rolls the day backwards in order to do that.
Yeah.
That's a big deal. Obviously, when Jesus died, it says that the earth stopped and it was in complete darkness for 6 hours. Mm-hmm. That's another one of those instances. And then in Israel during I think it was the 6 Days War, whatever it was.
I think so.
69, something like that. Whenever it was. 50 years ago or so, God stopped the sun and let them continue a battle for like 10 hours past when it should have been dark. And Israel won without a problem. But God does things like that, and we can't explain it scientifically, so don't bother trying.
Yeah, and it's kind of a conundrum to me because it kind of, again, goes back to what Job is saying, that we can answer 1 out of 1,000 questions that God poses. And it's kind of that picture of what we call science is just trying to understand the world around us. And kind of we categorize everything so that we can try and track things and compare things and evaluate and all of that. But even with all of these scientific advancements that we've had in even the last 100 years, we still know this much out of everything. Like we still just can't comprehend how God does things sometimes, and
or how DNA works.
Yeah. It's just exciting. I don't know. It's cool that God is so big.
Are you a biologist?
I am not a biologist.
Okay, so going into categorization, in verse 9 it says, He made the Bear, Orion, and the Pleiades in the chambers of the south. And so, if you're just reading through this, you may have no idea what that is. But they're constellations. And it goes directly on to, He seals off the stars and spreads out the heavens before it. And this is one of those things that people like to say, well, this shows it's not that old because they've only been around for this many years. Well,
No.
that doesn't mean anything. Obviously, they're here in the Bible.
Well, it would be interesting to see. I didn't, of course, look it up, but it would be interesting to see what the translation, the actual Hebrew is in verse 9 for the Bear, Orion, and the Pleiades. I think I looked it up last week. And it was, it's very clear that he's referencing Ursa Major, right?
Yes.
And Orion, and Pleiades is the Southern Cross, which is part of Taurus?
Part of Taurus, yes.
So that kind of brings up again the
chambers of the south.
Yeah, the fact that Job is giving God the glory in this monologue. He's giving God glory for how big he is and how powerful and strong and creative and everything. And so part of that, talking about these constellations, they would have used these for, navigating even on land, and they would have used them to kind of judge the seasons and things like that and track the time of year.
Well, the mountains were brand new at this point, so they didn't really know what they were.
Yeah. So I'm trying to think how to phrase this. So we get into trouble when we start to ascribe glory to the creation itself rather than the one who made it. And so I think that's kind of what happens in our society, because horoscopes are everywhere. They're on like every newspaper, almost every magazine, and they're all over the internet. Like some people like let that govern their day and let that govern, like they expect that that's actually predicting the way that their day is going to go, and
well, it does because they make it happen. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
subconsciously.
Self-fulfilling prophecy.
Well, and allowing like the whole I was born under this sign or that sign because that's the major constellation in the sky, that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean that your personality has to be this way or that way. There is nothing biblical about that. It's ascribing meaning and power to something that God created instead of acknowledging that God created this thing for us to enjoy and to use for directions and seasons and things like that. So, I don't know. It's just a matter of, I guess, perspective. Make sure that we are honoring the Creator and glorifying the Creator and not worshiping the creation. That's my rant.
Okay, moving on then. So he continues to go on and talking about how big God is and says, if he goes by me, I do not see him. If he moves past, I do not perceive him. So, can we see God?
Nope.
We can see his handiwork, but not him normally. And there's reasons for that. But it goes on to say, how then can I answer him and choose my words to reason with him? And so if I were righteous, I could not answer him. I would beg mercy of my judge. And if I called and he answered me, I would not believe that he was listening to my voice. He's acknowledging that God is great, big, amazing, wonderful. And even if Job was perfect, which he wasn't, he still would not compare to God. Mm-hmm. And so he goes on here to say, for he crushes me with a tempest and multiplies my wounds without cause. So does Job really feel that he deserves this punishment?
No.
Well, it's because he doesn't understand it's not a punishment. That's really what it comes down to. So he goes on to say, if it is a matter of strength, indeed he is strong. And if of justice, who will appoint my day in court? Because though if I were righteous, my own mouth would condemn me. So he's basically saying, I know I don't stand a chance because God's bigger, better. And I think I'm right. But even in my rightness, I'm still not right compared to God.
Yeah. And even in this, he's also acknowledging, even in the, as good as I could be, as perfect as I could be, I still am not perfect in God's eyes. He's acknowledging God's authority and his sovereignty, that he is the judge, and he is completely justified in that stance that we aren't righteous, that we aren't perfect, and that God is the ultimate judge. He's the one that makes that final judgment. So it's not only a how can I answer God, but it's a he's the only one I have to answer to.
Well, after that, Job actually starts getting to where the problem is. And he says, I am blameless, yet I do not know myself. I despise my life. It is all one thing. He's saying, I haven't done anything wrong here, but I'm getting punishment for it. I don't know what it is yet. But he says, therefore, he destroys blameless and the wicked, which that really is God's right to do. Mm-hmm. And it's not that he does necessarily that we understand now, but he allows things to happen. But this is where it goes on to get to where the meat of the question is if the scourge slays suddenly, he laughs at the plight of the innocent. The earth is given into the hand of the wicked. He covers the faces of his judges. And so if you leave it right there, it sounds like God's a really bad person, basically. Mm-hmm. But then he gets to where the point is if it is not he, who else could it be? So for whatever reason, I don't know what it could possibly be, but Job doesn't understand that Satan's there.
Yeah.
For some reason.
Yeah, I think that they obviously know that God is the one in charge. God is the one calling the shots. God's the one that flooded the earth. So they're not very far removed from that. So that's probably, like his friends were bringing up, that's kind of what they're going off of. Hey, if something bad is happening, you've probably done something wrong and God is punishing you.
Yeah, and it's fair to say that.
Yeah.
But it seems like he just doesn't understand yet that they're demons. It's really what it comes down to. Is either thinks that there aren't any, may not be aware of them, or is just so thoroughly convinced that God punishes everything because God can do such, that God's doing such.
Yeah.
It's just not clear here. Obviously, we know because we can read chapter 1 where it says Job, or Satan's up in heaven and says, let me punish this dude. Let me test him. God says, okay. But Job doesn't see that. He has no idea that Satan is the one doing everything to him. He has no reason to, as far as we can tell.
Yeah. I think some of it is also probably having been so close to the flood, they probably have such a firm grasp of God's power and authority that even if they're aware of the existence of demons, it wouldn't necessarily occur to them that God would even allow them to do this, because it doesn't seem like he's ever done that before at this point.
No, possibly may not have. It's also possible they just may not, have the book to tell them that he has.
Yeah.
Because it hadn't been written yet. Yeah, but Job doesn't quite get it yet. But he goes on, now my days are swifter than a runner. They flee away. They see no good. Pass by like swift ships, like an eagle swooping on its prey. So all these things are images of days going fast and movement. And I doubt it's moving very fast if he's sitting in a pile of refuse and scraping himself with glass shards still. But hooray.
Yeah. I don't know that I could make the day go fast enough if that's what the day was like. That's awful.
Yeah. Then he goes into what the current thing is if I say I will forget my complaint, I'll put off my sad face and wear a smile. Yay. Happy platitudes. They don't work. And then he goes on to say, I'm afraid of all my sufferings. I know you will not hold me innocent. If I am condemned, why then do I labor in vain? Mm-hmm. And so he's acknowledging that God is in control no matter what. And he's not sure what's going on still.
Yeah.
Which that's entirely fair. He has no reason to understand what was going on.
Yeah.
It's not until later when God tells him what's going on that he should have reasoning to understand it.
Yeah.
But he goes through all that and then says, if I wash myself with snow water and cleanse my hands with soap. And so snow water would be the purest water on the planet at this point. Because snow's amazing. More snow.
We're so excited for snow.
And then cleansing his hands with soap, which obviously soap cleans. Soap back then is not very fun for you because it's made from lye and caused lots of things that are bad at the same time. But the idea is if I was all clean and perfect, then God still, in verse 31, it says, yet you will plunge me into the pit and my own clothes will abhor me. That's bringing that pleasant picture for him.
Yeah.
Saying, yeah, I'm hated by everything, including my clothes I'm wearing.
So not everyone appreciates the visual aspect of Hebrew, but it is a very visual, like, picture language. And that sounds confusing. They use
It's like kindergarten.
very descriptive things to explain ideas. So that's kind of where the whole idea of a parable came from, is because telling a parable gives the story, it gives context, it gives all angles of this idea so that you can really grasp it and understand what the person's saying.
Because they're rhyming words about the hot dog.
So, not necessarily. But I appreciate it a lot. I'm a very visual person.
I'm not.
And I think the word pictures that Job is using, it just, I don't know, it makes it more tangible, I guess, to me, more understandable. Like in verse 27, if I say I will forget my complaint, I'll put off my sad face and wear a smile. How many times in your life have you been sad or upset or frustrated? Well, probably more sad, upset, concerned about something, but you're in a situation where you have to wear a smile. You just have to be in that social construct. You have to put that aside and not let that
Yeah, I don't work
show.
fast food. I work at Walmart.
Yeah, you could be grumpy all day.
Exactly.
Yeah, there are just times when, like Job is saying, even if I did that, even if I said, okay, I'm not going to complain, I'm just going to be happy and be glad I'm alive, you're still going to say I'm guilty, and nothing's going to change. Like that, all that's going to do is be me smiling while I'm sitting in a pile of ash and
Yummy.
disgustingness. Like that, it's a false.
It's a platitude.
Yeah.
Like his friends were saying.
Yeah. Anyhow, sorry, that was a little backtracking.
Just a little bit.
So.
But we're going to move on to the last part where he is really saying, I need Jesus to be here. And he says, for he is not a man as I am, that I may answer him, that we should go to court together. Which, you don't ever want to do that. Going to court, bad. Very bad. But anyway, nor is there any mediator between us who may lay his hand on us both. Let him take his rod away from me, and do not let me dread of him terrify me. Then I would speak and not fear him, but it's not so with me. So he's really saying here, we need someone that can act between God on this side and man on this side, that can speak equally with both. And that is the foreshadowing of Jesus coming.
Yeah.
So he's saying that we need to have someone that lives in both realms, that knows both sides, that can do both parts. Mm-hmm. And he's saying, and he has to be our friend.
Yeah.
Not just, okay, I'm going to be up here and I'm going to say you're guilty, I'm going to smack you with a big rod stuff. He's going to say he's our friend that will take us by the hand, help us through things, and get to where we're supposed to be.
And teach us, yeah, and grow us. And yeah, it's one of those visuals that Jesus is our mediator, and seeing it from this perspective, because we have the whole rest of the Bible, we have the New Testament, we know what Jesus came and did, we know that Jesus fits that absolutely 100% to a T.
This is one of the Jews think about this part.
It just like Isaiah 57, is it?
55
or 53?
53, the suffering servant.
Yeah. Anyhow, there. Yeah, I'm curious.
There, yeah, totally.
Anyhow,
Sure, dude. Cowabunga.
It's encouraging in a weird way to see what Job has to say in this chapter, because at some point in our lives, we can relate to some level of, no matter what I do on my own, I can't make enough of a difference. I can't be perfect. I can't do enough to reach that mark that God has set as a standard. But again, we have the New Testament. We see that Jesus did that, and he fulfilled this being a mediator between God and man, and showing, because again, they're so close to when the flood happened. There's, I think, a large aspect of their perception of God at this point is still, he is vengeance. He is
Amen.
wrath, and
he's angry.
And
Hulk smash.
And it seems like Job is aware that there's more to it than just God being this big angry guy on a cloud with a lightning bolt. But he doesn't fully see or understand the love of God yet, because he hasn't experienced that mediation, that personal relationship. So I don't know if I'm rambling too much. I'm sorry.
Oh, just for 20 minutes so far.
Go ahead.
Okay, so he goes through all that. And as I read a moment ago, in 35 it reads, then I would speak and not fear him. But it is not so with me. And so Job is really here showing, this, as I said earlier, the human condition. He's showing that mankind needs this thing. He needs something to step between where they exist and where God is. Mm-hmm. They need a bridge to fix that gap that we have created. And then we can be on fair footing and talk to God as someone that loves us and cares for us and doesn't want to just crush us. But he acknowledges that he is not there. And to be fair, it's not his fault.
Yeah.
Jesus hadn't come yet. But he really was stuck on the I'm suffering, which you're suffering. That's where you're normally stuck. That's how humans work. Yeah. And so he has no reason really to think past that, where he gets to at the end of the book finally, which will be, like 7 months down the road still, but he's going to get there eventually. But Job is at the point here where he's acknowledging where every human is at some point in life. No matter what your circumstance, no matter how good you have it, you're going to be at a point where you're going to have to acknowledge, I'm not good enough. Mm-hmm. Even if you think you are, inside you still know you're not good enough. And you know that God is the only way to do it. Mm-hmm. And so obviously there are lots of people that decide that they want to be God and therefore remove themselves from that equation. But that doesn't mean that changes what reality is. And the reality is that God's bigger, God's better. We don't measure up. We need Jesus.
And God saw that need and not only felt for us, but took care of it, like at absolutely no cost to us, at absolutely no requirement of us except that we acknowledge him. And I don't know, it's just acknowledge and accept, and let God be the one in charge of your life. And I don't know, it's absolutely nothing of us. And I think sometimes Christians forget that we have this relationship with God where we can pray and talk to him and be comforted by the Holy Spirit and encouraged and all of these things. And we feel, God is love and he is love, but he is also what Job is talking about. He is also justice, and he's also
only wouldn't be loving if he didn't do those things.
Exactly. I just think sometimes Christians, we forget that we have the position, the relationship with God that we have because of God sending Jesus. Not because we did anything, not because we're special, not because anything else, only because God is good and he chose to take care of that and provide the way. And we've accepted that, I guess. The only thing we've done is accept and acknowledge and yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Something got stuck in Matthew a few days ago. Where Jesus says that my yoke is easy and my burden is lighter. And that's really what this is talking about is life is hard. God makes it better. Doesn't make it easy, but he'll make it better.
Yeah. Well,
but we're over half an hour now, so we should go ahead and
we're
pray.
Gonna stop. I could keep going. I'm sorry.
Forever. It was shorter last week. Okay, go ahead and bow. Dear Lord in heaven, we thank you for this day, and just thank you that you're a great and mighty God. We thank you for your Son being sent, and that he lived a perfect life and died on the cross for us, so that we don't have to live a perfect life, but we can seek you out still and come to know you in ways that only you could make possible. We thank you for being great and mighty, and thank you for everything you've done in your full name. Amen.
Amen.
Shameless advertising. Watch videos for Retro Gamer 365 and watch Cowboy Collection. Yeah. Turtles are awesome.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Let us know your thoughts. Any references you think would be cool to kind of read along with this, maybe.
Kickstart too.
And
Game Fuel.
And he's going to keep advertising for things that we're not getting sponsored by. Just things he likes. So anyhow, thank you so much. We'll talk to you soon.